Welcome to Mystic Realms Recap. Please like, share, and subscribe. Enjoy today's episode.
After Chen Ming had just finished talking with Hui Huang, and Yu Hui's senior executives had discussed Chen Ming's plan with each other. At the 14th Corps base, on the apron next to the headquarters building, Tang Shi, the nominal commander-in-chief of the Joint Fleet, was walking down the shuttle that had just docked here with a pale face. Standing on the edge of the apron were a large number of well-trained guards, as well as Bai Quan, who was protected by a large number of guards. Bai Quan was wearing the special uniform of the 14th Corps at this time. Through the collar, you can see that his uniform was full of bandages. He stood straight. His face was like ice with sharp blades. When Tang Shi got off the boat and walked towards the headquarters building, he walked in front of him. Bai Quan's hoarse tone was cold because of his injury, and he said to Tang Shi word by word, "Are you back? Let's go." He turned around directly after he said that, and did not take Tang Shi's existence into consideration at all. Tang Shi did not dare to have any thoughts, and his mind was only filled with fear of Bai Quan. But he still forced himself to ask, "Where are we going?" Bai Quan, the supreme commander of the 14th Legion in this star field, paused and continued to walk forward without looking back and said, "My office. Since you are back, then follow the procedures. You need to report your mission to me. You should have learned this." Bai Quan's suddenly heavier tone made Tang Shi nervous again. He stammered, Well, yes, I have learned it." Bai Quan did not go into whether what Tang Shi said was true. He continued to say to Tang Shi like a cold machine, "You need to report whether the mission objectives have been achieved or not, and report the losses, including the loss of spacecraft and the loss of missing personnel and casualties." "And what did you do during the entire mission?" "You were elected after I was accidentally seriously injured and unconscious. You won't let me down, right?" Bai Quan's voice became lower and lower, as if because of his unhealed injuries. But this low and hoarse voice was increasingly deafening in Tang Shi's ears, making him dare not think about what would happen next. Bai Quan suddenly turned his head to look at Tang Shi, and the reflection under his glasses made Tang Shi unable to open his eyes. When Tang Shi closed his eyes for a moment and looked up again, he seemed to see his body reflected in Bai Quan's sharp eyes. Tang Shi suddenly felt like he was falling into an ice cave, and his limbs were so stiff that he didn't know how to walk. After noticing that Tang Shi's movement slowed down, the guards around Bai Quan also slowed down immediately. They directly pushed away the guards who were protecting Tang Shi with brute force and half carried him to catch up with Bai Quan. No one dared to resist. At the same time, Zhang Feng, who was on the spaceship behind, was standing by the porthole of the shuttle. He was watching everything that was happening outside, and at the same time, he was holding the terminal to communicate with others. The communication was quickly connected, and a generous middle-aged male voice sounded from the terminal, "Speak." Zhang Feng was slightly relieved after hearing this voice. As long as the man who had not given him additional instructions on Tang Shi's mission before departure answered the phone now, everything would be fine. However, he did not show any special performance on the surface. He just explained the mission normally and said, "Lieutenant General, we have returned to the 14th Corps base now." Tang Shi was taken away by Bai Quan directly after getting off the boat. The middle-aged man called Lieutenant General by Zhang Feng did not mean to blame Zhang Feng at this time. He said, "This is normal. Now the news that we have returned in defeat has begun to spread outside. Because someone suffered too much loss in your mission, he has told Bai Quan everything in advance." Zhang Feng followed the words of the Lieutenant General and said, "Is it done by speed technology?" The Lieutenant General paused and said, "Don't worry about it. We just need to take care of ourselves now. I know this mission is not your problem, but since it has happened, we must lie dormant for a while to avoid being completely liquidated. We will decline a little, but it is impossible to fall completely. But I want to know, is there any good news in this entire mission?" "Yes." Zhang Feng sent a video along the encrypted communication line. The video content is the scene where the last ruler-class ship that stayed alone attacked the positioning coordinate signals continuously sent out by the planet where Chen Ming was. Although this video is due to the various energy fluctuations of the chaotic battlefield and the electronic interference of the Afterglow fleet, It is also the last video of the ruler class that was broadcasted in real time through a remote signal connection, so the picture is very blurry. But through the sensors of the ruler class, it can still be seen that the iron ore was completely destroyed and the building next to it was hit by the Gauss cannon. As the iron ore exploded and the debris scattered, the research institute was hit by flying building debris, and the smoke and dust raised by the Gauss cannon was completely covered. The sensor of this ruler-class ship was also completely interfered and cut off, and it was also destroyed. The video ends here. The tone of the lieutenant general sounded a little relieved and said, "Okay, this is the only good news now. Sky Steel can't be taken back now, but at least we have to give an explanation to those who have been cooperating with us. Chen Ming's death is the best explanation. Okay, go and help Tang Shi out. We will use our connections to delay Baichuan's investigation of the results of this mission. As long as the people are transferred away, Tang Shi will not die. This time he is considered a failure. He is not worth our training at all. In the future, just listen to what others say about Tang Shi. Don't believe it all, especially her." The lieutenant general's words were meaningful, and Zhang Feng didn't dare to respond too much, just agreed vaguely. The lieutenant general didn't care about this, but comforted Zhang Feng. "I know your difficulties, but some things can't be changed. I understand. Well, and remember to come to me directly after you bring your people back from the base. I have something to tell you." The communication was hung up. The lieutenant general who was communicating with Zhang Feng put down the terminal and looked up at a woman with a frosty face standing next to his office. The woman was about the same age as him and looked slightly older than him. Obviously, it was the person he had just hinted at in his words, and Zhang Feng didn't want to contact. Although the lieutenant general mentioned her to others in front of her, and his words were not very polite, she didn't have any direct opinions about the lieutenant general. She just asked the lieutenant general, "Are you sure Chen Ming is dead?" The lieutenant general pushed the terminal on the desk and said, "The video is here. Chen Ming is dead if he is hit directly by such power. Even if he survives, Yu Hui is definitely not easy to get along with. We launched such a large-scale rescue. Yu Hui must be very wary of him. He can't come back alive." The middle-aged woman frowned, copied a copy of the video, and left the office. Her eyes were full of distrust, and she also left a sentence. "I will confirm whether Chen Ming is dead or not." The lieutenant general looked at her back and shook his head. As the joint fleet returned to the 14th Corps, a week passed quickly. The news of the defeat of the battle between the Gallo Starfield and the Yu Hui Starfield had spread to the pirate space station closest to the Starfield border. And some details of the mission that caused this battle were somehow spread. For example, the cause of the mission was that the protagonist of the mission, Chen Ming, alone called the Yu Hui fleet to rescue him, and a frigate successfully escaped from the pursuit of the corrupt military cruiser fleet of the original Star Zone. He was rescued by the newly stationed 14th Corps, Tachyon Technology, Shinda Company, and the joint forces of the Star Zone government, and the degree of attention was fully taken. Needless to say, the speed of news spread in places like the pirate space station. Soon, there were rumors about Chen Ming in the entire Gallo Star Zone, and even in several neighboring star zones. Of course, the content of the rumors changed during the transmission process. For example, the final failure of the mission and the cause of Chen Ming's death were not the wrong command of the commander of the 14th Corps, nor was it that Chen Ming was killed when he was forced to evacuate. Instead, Chen Ming had been rescued, but a large amount of unexpected support from Yu Hui arrived and attacked the fleet before the fleet evacuated, resulting in Chen Ming's accidental death. At the same time, it also led to the complete failure of the mission. This statement saved some face for the 14th Corps and also added some legendary color to Chen Ming's experience. Because no one knew who spread Chen Ming's ability. How could a psychic who could control several warships and increase the performance of warships be killed by Yu Hui under normal circumstances? So after hearing such rumors, some people thought that Chen Ming did die accidentally as said, and some people thought that Chen Ming was tortured in Yu Hui's territory and died of serious injuries after being rescued. Of course, there are conspiracy theories, believing that someone in the Empire thought Chen Ming's psychic power was too dangerous, so he was killed directly. However, these statements did not spread due to the intentional restrictions of public opinion. Instead, Chen Ming's previous experience was dug out. The whole process from the mining space station to the pirate space station to the Yuhui starfield was spread. The inexplicable destruction of the mining space station of the Cinda Company and the embezzlement of the Sky Steel production share for decades. All of these stimulated the nerves of people in the relatively calm edge starfield of the Gallo starfield and focused people's attention on these places. I don't know whether it was the company's handiwork in order to put pressure on the 14th Corps through public opinion so that they would give out the Sky Steel they should give. Or was it the 14th Corps themselves, in order to divert the outside world's attention from the failure of their actions and focus all on the original Star Zone military that had been driven away? But in short, their goal was achieved. After the rumors gradually spread, the main content basically focused on the corruption of the Star Zone army and the fall of Chen Ming, rising star of the future mankind. Before this rumor became completely popular, the factory director who had a close relationship with Chen Ming had already received the news from the chairman in advance. It was said that the 14th Corps' mission failed and Chen Ming died. So before this outrageous rumor spread, the factory director was forced to have a gloomy face all day long. Old Wu was similar, going to bars every day to drink to relieve his sorrow. Of course, in fact, both of them knew the real situation, and the sad look was pretended to be seen by others who were monitoring them. Old Wu pretended to be quite happy. After the news spread for a few days, the limelight passed. The military personnel of the original Star region who had been taken away a long time ago were tried, and the results of the trial were announced. In addition, Chen Ming, the rising star, completely fell and was no longer known. The factory director gradually relaxed and no longer had to keep a straight face every day. Old Wu was still the same as before, but he was pretending at the beginning, and he was really sad that he could not be a pendulum at the end. He could not accept the fact that the news about Chen Ming had completely disappeared after just a few days. However, after all, Chen Ming's ability has not yet been fully revealed in front of everyone, and it just seems that he has great potential in various aspects, such as spacecraft driving and combat command. Although there are not many individuals who show potential, they are not few, and there are also some who died. But no matter how promising a person is, he is dead. No one cares about a dead person. Even if a big shot in the prosperous star field knows the existence of Chen Ming and knows how great his ability is, it is useless. The responsibility should be pursued to the 14th Legion, which has nothing to do with ordinary people, so the news will naturally gradually die. The rumors about Chen Ming's psychic power were only spread to the two surrounding star regions. From then on, the rumors about Chen Ming would only be mentioned occasionally when something related to Yue appeared. This is actually what Chen Ming wants to see the most. It would be best if everyone forgot about him. When Chen Ming appears again in the future, someone will be unable to sleep. It would be better to say that if someone still thinks about him now, he will be unable to sleep. If the ability to control 3 Yuhui star systems is known now, either the 14th Corps will guard against this news and never leak any information, just to kill Chen Ming and eliminate future troubles, or the entire empire will pay attention to Chen Ming, who is rumored to be a top psychic, and Chen Ming will be brought back by the empire with all its strength. The 14th Corps may be liquidated, but this also means that Chen Ming may not be free for the rest of his life. No matter which result is, he doesn't want to see it. So it's best if others forget about his affairs. But it seems that this situation will not happen. After all, Chen Ming had learned about the whole situation from Old Wu, and the few days he stayed in Yuhui were peaceful and calm, without any sign that someone was going to look for him. All aspects of the work are now progressing steadily. The expansion of Yuhui controlled by Chen Ming in the Yuhui galaxy has also made new progress. The semi-industrial and semi-military galaxy located on the border between Yuhui and the mechanical race, where Gamma Z had stayed before, has completely fallen into his hands. The military strength, mainly armed ships, has made great progress, which will definitely play a significant role when Chen Ming leaves the Yuhui star field later. As Hui Huang said that the date for the completion of the artificial awakening nerve they were preparing was getting closer. Chen Ming has also begun to let Gamma Z and Hui Huang speed up the control of other Yuhui individuals within the acceptable risk range. Before the final moment, the more control the better. The more Yuhui power he has under his command, the more confident he will be when he is exposed. Although no matter how many people are controlled, it is impossible to compete with the entire Yuhui in the Yuhui Star region in the remaining 10 days. But Chen Ming's goal was not this from the beginning, so it is not a big problem. In addition, in the past few days, Chen Ming tried to communicate with Hui Huang every day in front of other Yuhui and asked Hui Huang for the Liar Stone and Whispering Stone that were stolen from him before, and also asked for a new exploration ship. However, after Hui Huang asked the higher-ups, the result was that neither of these two would be given. However, Yuhui was very generous in other aspects of technology and gave a lot. Come to think of it, after all, the Spirit Stone may affect their second experiment again. As for the exploration ship, Yuhui certainly doesn't want to see Chen Ming's spaceship crash into the dome outside again. On the contrary, how much can Chen Ming learn in the last 20 days even if he is allowed to learn freely? Things like technology may be relatively simple at the beginning, but the deeper it goes, the more difficult it will be and the longer it will take to learn. At least for serious people and serious Yuhui. As for Chen Ming, he can only say that his spiritual power has made considerable progress after absorbing the spiritual nerve. His learning efficiency has also increased again. After Chen Ming and Hui Huang confirmed it, the learning efficiency has exceeded most of the beta-level Yuhui and reached the edge of the alpha-level Yuhui. You must know that each alpha-level Yuhui can be comparable to a top-level computer and has the computing power to control at least one galaxy industry. It is already a very abnormal thing that Chen Ming can catch up with Yuhui in the field that Yuhui is best at as a human. In addition, Yuhui gave Hui Huang a lot of authority, even if it was because there was too much to learn. Chen Ming could also continue to rely on Hui Huang's current authority to obtain other technical knowledge that Hui Huang did not know. In addition, Chen Ming could always feel the location of the Liar Stone, which was in the basement of the Institute. So under the influence of various factors, he did not really force it. When he was about to leave, he could take it away at such a close distance. So, after Chen Ming's two requests were rejected in succession and Hui Huang successfully appeased him on the surface. Although Chen Ming pretended to be a slacker and no longer helped Yuhui, he was just a parasite. But he still worked and studied normally every day. In addition, he found that the work area of the Institute was repaired over time, and the experimental area and research area next to it were also available. However, the chilling nerve extractor inside was moved away one night. The location where it was moved was still in the basement of the Institute. Chen Ming didn't care about it. After all, Yuhui could do whatever he wanted with the device. If he could start it, he would lose. In the past few days, Chen Ming not only studied and worked, but also secretly cooperated with Hui Huang and Gamma Z to deal with other Yuhui. He was also researching new scientific research projects. The multi-layer shield he had researched before was used with the iron ore, which moved on its own for some unknown reason and could also use his psychic power. It successfully allowed a frigate-level ship to block the attack of the cruiser's large weapons. Although it was mainly due to Chen Ming's psychic power, the shield did work. Otherwise, the shield of the iron ore would have been completely shattered in the first attack. How could there be a second chance to deflect the attack and a third chance to help the Institute and Chen Ming bear the attack? Therefore, Chen Ming has already seen the importance of the shield, so the research must be studied. The new high-strength shield must be put online, but he is still planning the current research ideas, which will take some time. However, the main thing Chen Ming is doing now is to learn some additional industrial production technologies related to the colonial technology given by Hui Huang. Chen Ming has already talked with Hui Huang about his future plans, and Hui Huang supports the idea of the colony. At the same time, Hui Huang also knows the effect of Chen Ming's ability. Therefore, some equipment technologies that are difficult to move through Chen Ming's spiritual power and difficult for Hui Huang to produce personally, with complex production processes or long production processes, will be handed over to Chen Ming to learn. At that time, Chen Ming's manufacturing capabilities, which have not played a key role so far, will be put to good use. It seems that everything is moving in a good direction. And today, that is, the 8th day after Chen Ming and Yu Hui tore their faces, they both knew that the other party must have some ideas in their hearts. The factory director contacted Chen Ming early in the morning using the terminal that Chen Ming had prepared for them before, and the authority was completely in Chen Ming's hands. He said that the boss had returned and sent over an extra terminal that Chen Ming had prepared before. The factory director and the boss had sufficient reasons to meet and would not say anything to expose Chen Ming. So Chen Ming contacted the boss directly. The boss, who was lying behind the counter of the hardware store as usual, noticed that the terminal that the factory manager had just sent over began to vibrate. He showed a little relief on his face and said directly to the terminal, "Xiao Ming, I just heard that you died 2 days ago, and you are still alive? Just lucky? No, it can't be considered lucky. At the beginning, I was chased by the military of the Star Zone, and in the end a ruler blocked me. Now I have run to Yu Hui's side, and in the end a ruler came to kill me. This is really not good luck." The boss obviously didn't expect this strange coincidence. But after thinking that Chen Ming was talking to him without any reason, he just smiled and continued, "At least you are still alive, right? And seeing your current condition, you should have a way to escape." Well, although my previous plan was ruined by the sneak attack of the 14th Corps, I have already made a new plan. The boss did not ask Chen Ming how he planned to escape, but directly asked the key point of the matter. "So what are your plans after you get out?" The boss obviously knew the whole picture of what the 14th Legion was doing, so the question he asked was directly about the key to the development of the situation. Chen Ming had nothing to hide from his boss who had been guiding him and helping him and said, "Burning this star field? No, it's the Empire. I don't want to go back for the time being, and it shouldn't be easy to go back later. So I want to build a colony outside, but boss, I want to discuss with you about the specific matters of the colony." "What to discuss?" "I want to try to build a colony myself." "Oh." The boss immediately understood what Chen Ming meant and was not angry because of Chen Ming's change of mind. He just persuaded, "This will be difficult." "I think I can." "Then can you solve the personnel, materials, and technology?" "All are fine. The personnel aspect is the easiest to solve, and the technology is also the same. Only the materials aspect may have some gaps." The boss asked with some surprise, "How many do you have already?" 3 star systems and scattered throughout the star field individuals. Many of them are only responsible for production and cannot fight. And because one individual in Yu Hui can control the operation of an entire production facility, the density is much lower than here, so the total number should be only about 50,000. There is also an Alpha-class Yu Hui with capabilities in industrial production and colony management, and an Alpha class capable of fleet command. But I just controlled the latter one, and I haven't actually understood it yet. That's not bad. For some reason, the boss suddenly seemed very satisfied and said, "This is what I want to see. What will happen after your psychic power improves? So you need me to help you with supplies, right? Well, as long as I build the colony in the end, we can talk about the rest slowly." Chen Ming already has a large number of Yu Hui individuals as the basis for the development of the colony, and has the technology and management experience of Hui Huang, an Alpha-class Yu Hui. There is also an Alpha-class Yu Hui on the border planet where Gamma Z had stayed before, which must be capable of combat as a patrol team. The construction of the colony is basically only short of supplies. But that's the problem. There is no profit in the early stage of colony development, especially for such an isolated colony as Chen Ming wants to build. The investment is huge, and it is even more distant to see the profit. Fortunately, Chen Ming's ability has an advantage in the transportation of materials that is difficult to match with normal channels, so that the colony will not have development problems in the future due to the difficulty of transportation caused by distance. After listening to Chen Ming's general idea, the boss did not reject his request. Instead, he said with some relief, "It's a good thing that you have a clear idea. It just so happens that I went to do something before and got something back." "What is it?" "Something you definitely need. A Supreme Point class exploration cruiser." Supreme Point? This is a type of spacecraft that Chen Ming has never heard of, but he still understands the words exploration ship. The boss explained, "I told you before that I'm a member of the Psychic Society. I went out this time to help the Psychic Society recruit new members." He's a former researcher at Tachyon Technology. He didn't do well in the company before and wasn't well received. And there's also a guy in our society who's in Tachyon Technology. He noticed the psychic potential in this researcher and established a good relationship with him in advance. New members must be announced in the society in advance, and at least 3 old people must witness it. I was pulled in because I was close, but it's basically just a matter of going through the process. This new guy made a request before joining us. He wants us to help him build and test the spaceship he designed before, which is the Supreme Point Class exploration cruiser I just mentioned. In addition to going through the final process this time, we also have to bring the ship back. Everyone in the association knows that I have a psychic like you on the ship, so it's great to have you test the ship. It just so happens that we talked about the colony before, and you also need this search. Can you help me? The boss asked this question, and then immediately added, "Of course I know that you are nominally dead, so I will definitely help you cover up this matter. Just say that I found out that you were dead after I came back, so I deliberately found another driver to test it. Others didn't know before, right?" With the boss's guarantee, Chen Ming wanted to agree directly, but after thinking about it, he still said, "Yes, it's okay, but can I return the ship I controlled?" "It doesn't matter. Since we have already manufactured the first prototype, the cost of manufacturing other spacecrafts can be reduced. It is not difficult to build another one. And the new guy just wants to get the data of the spacecraft to confirm whether it is worth mass-producing this spacecraft. Even if you drive it out and it explodes, it will explode. Just treat it as a test of the protective performance." Okay, Chen Ming agreed and asked, "What about this ship? Is the new model of the ship reliable?" "The theoretical design is fine. Our association also has other professional spacecraft engineers who can verify it. Moreover, the new guy's psychic power is about the brain. He has a good brain, so there must be no problem with the spacecraft design. It's just that he wants to test the spacecraft, and he insists on conducting field exploration and testing in the marginal star field. Otherwise, it wouldn't be so troublesome." The boss recalled the previous situation and said, "In fact, when he asked this some time ago, I wanted to arrange for someone else to do it. After all, your situation was not very convenient before. But you said before that your situation was okay, so I took on this request at that time. Now that you have taken the initiative to bring this up, there will be no problem with giving you this ship, right?" Chen Ming must be very happy to do this now. If he helps to record the data of the actual application of the spacecraft, he can get a cruiser as a reward. This deal is too cost-effective. When he leaves the Yuhui star region, he can directly drive this supreme point to explore the galaxy suitable for colonization. Since the Psychic Society is the organization that wants to test the spacecraft, the supply of materials must be all handled by the boss, and Chen Ming does not need to bear the material needs of an additional cruiser. Moreover, if such a ship is designed and manufactured by the members of the society, it will definitely not be recorded in any public account. Chen Ming's current situation of pretending to be dead is unlikely to be suspected. However, the boss now said this, which made Chen Ming unable to help but ask, "Boss, this psychic society? It's just a loose force of psychics helping each other, just like an ordinary small circle. The small circle of psychics has nothing to do with ordinary people." The boss understood what Chen Ming meant and said, "You want to ask me why I didn't mention it to you and didn't invite you to join, right? Yeah, I don't want to interfere with your development directly unless you ask for it. And in my opinion, joining the association has no practical benefit for you at the moment, because you don't have the resources that can actually be mobilized in the empire now, and Yuhui doesn't count. You have been in the country for too short a time, and you don't have time to develop at all. And mutual assistance within the Psychic Association requires basic capital. Just like that newcomer, he used the spaceship he designed as his capital. But the technology of spaceship design alone is not enough to be called capital, so he wants to verify the spaceship and make the technology have practical application value. So, unless you can quickly make a valuable finished product with the technology you got from Yuhui, it's actually not very useful. Chen Ming was stunned and glanced at the manufacturing function on his panel. This seems to be a way to quickly realize the value of technology. However, the boss continued to say, "By the way, the psychic who interfered with my rescue of you before is also a member of the Psychic Society." Chen Ming stopped thinking about joining the Psychic Society, frowned and asked, "Is there such a thing?" "Yes, so if you don't want to be remembered too early, it's best to stay away from the society. You definitely don't want to expose your situation now, otherwise you should have found a way to contact the 14th Legion to hold them accountable. Instead of quietly asking Lao Lu to send me a terminal, Chen Ming's main target now is not the psychic who lives in the prosperous star field of the Empire, which is extremely dangerous for him, but the 14th Legion located in the Edge star field, and the high-level officials of the war zone composed of several nearby Edge star fields. If he joins the Psychic Society now, he will definitely attract people he doesn't want to meet now. So Chen Ming chose to accept the boss's opinion and explained, "It's like this. I think hiding now will be most helpful for what I will do later. If I live, I may not get an explanation from the 14th Corps, but will be retaliated by them. But I will definitely get more opportunities if I die. Whether it's the chance to survive or the chance to settle this account." The boss nodded and said, "Well, it's true, but the situation over the 14th Corps is actually a bit complicated. Do you want to listen? I won't interfere with your decision, but I think you should make a decision based on more intelligence." "Okay." The boss recalled a little and said, Bai Quan was seriously injured and unconscious during the previous patrol. The person who took over his task was a second generation, with a subordinate who was quite capable. The first thing that came up was the heavy news that the commander-in-chief of the Joint Fleet was replaced before the war. Chen Ming immediately asked, "Was Bai Quan's injury an accident or?" "They said it was an accident, but I heard that more than 20 people in the 14th Corps had their hats taken away, and they all had high positions." "Then it's not an accident." These two sentences are enough for Chen Ming to figure out the rest of the story. I guess the forces behind this second generation wanted to give him some credit, so they took the opportunity to deal with Bai Quan once, and then let their capable subordinate help him complete this mission. Chen Ming suddenly exhaled and asked, "Will such a dirty thing happen inside the 14th Corps, the strongest independent corps in the Empire?" "Well, let's put it this way. This second generation is not the second generation of the 14th Corps. He is the second generation of a big family in the Empire, and he sneaked into the 14th Corps to get gilded. Promotions within the 14th Corps are purely based on merit. This is the foundation established after the reorganization of the 14th Corps and will never change. But in the execution of tasks, as long as the people above are fine and the people below perform well, the people above can share part of the credit. This is the military command system is fixed and cannot be changed. Your guess is similar in other aspects, but it is a little more complicated. This second generation actually entered the 14th Legion through a legitimate way, but he used some background on the way to promotion. But these are all within the rules. You can't say that there is anything wrong with a second generation who already has a military position bringing a few guards he trusts, even if the ability of this guard is better than that of the second generation." The boss suddenly showed a look of seeing something interesting on his face and said, "In addition, because he is an internal staff of the 14th Legion, but his background is not, a very coincidental thing happened. Do you know who was the source of the Sky Steel incident at the beginning?" Chen Ming immediately said, "I know. Old Wu told me before that it was a private practice of several high-level officials in the war zone, including the Gallo Star region. They rely on the benefits of Sky Steel to keep in touch with many people and exchange interests." The boss immediately confirmed Chen Ming's statement. Yes, Sky Steel has gained a lot of benefits for them, but it also makes their information easily leaked. "So after the fleet that rescued you had an accident, I heard about it a long time ago. The second generation who took over Bai Quan this time has the background of one of the people who robbed the Sky Steel of Shinda Company in the war zone." Chen Ming's expression suddenly became gloomy, and he said, "The mining space station was destroyed, and I lay in the freezer above for 3 days. The culprit of 10 years, what a narrow road for enemies. In that case, the United Fleet had no intention of saving me from the beginning after being taken over by the second generation. So where did their achievements come from? After losing my spiritual energy, what else can be called sufficient achievements? And I still have Chengxinghe in my hands. Bai Quan attaches great importance to him, and the 14th Legion must also attach importance to him. Killing me is equivalent to killing Chengxinghe. What do the people who took over think? Wait, their goal would not be there from the beginning? That Kletka? It's just a visit to my place and kill me by the way." The boss agreed with Chen Ming's idea again. Yes, destroy Kleka, and the entire Yuhui star domain will become our territory in the near future. The achievement of expanding territory is indeed greater than saving you, even if there is Cheng Xinghe. No matter how much potential a person who has not grown up has, it is not actual ability. If your psychic power has gained fame within the empire, and Cheng Xinghe has reached the level of a colonel, then they might need to think more before actually taking action. But now, it's obviously not possible. But even so, after all, the 14th Corps didn't get anything in the end, and lost a considerable number of fleets. I guess something must have happened to the 14th Corps, and it depends on Bai Quan's decision and skill. So, what do you think now that you know this? Chen Ming thought quietly for a while. The boss didn't urge him at this time, and waited patiently for Chen Ming's answer. After a while, Chen Ming said, "It doesn't make much difference. Looking at this matter as a whole, it is the 14th Corps' own internal personnel who did these things, so they must bear this responsibility and must give me an explanation." The boss suddenly thought of something at this time and asked, "By the way, aren't you dead? How can I explain to you?" Chen Ming's brain crashed for a moment, and then he realized that he was led into a ditch by his boss's leading questions. So he immediately said, "The 14th Corps failed in its mission, and they gave up on me when they could have definitely rescued me by cooperating with me, and then failed. Then their own sufficient punishment is the best explanation for me. The loss of their fleet is not small. If people can get away with it, it would be too outrageous." The boss raised his mouth slightly, and he confirmed that Chen Ming was not blinded by hatred, and he still had the rationality to think calmly. And Chen Ming continued, "Of course, their internal punishment alone is not enough. This is their own problem of mission failure. I wanted to cooperate with them before, but I was attacked by the rulers in the end. When I have the ability, I will personally get back this account. And there is a mining space station in the war zone. In the future, this so-called rescue operation is actually a killing operation. I will find a way to find an opportunity to get back these two grudges." The boss suddenly said, "The main force of the 14th Legion is now on the other side. The 14th Legion here is just a small one. It's reasonable for you to have this idea, but you only have 3 star systems now, and you also want to seek revenge on the high level of the war zone covering 3-star fields?" The boss's tone did not have any doubts about Chen Ming's excessive ideas. Instead, he asked this question very seriously. After hearing this question, Chen Ming said confidently, "My ability means I can do it." The boss smiled and said, "To be honest, I really hope to see such a day. It will be very interesting. Just tell me if you need anything. I am very bored every day now." Chen Ming always felt that the boss had the potential to be a funny person. However, if he had the boss's ability and strength, he might have similar ideas at that time. But now, he is far from that level. He needs to go further. Shortly after Chen Ming and the boss finished talking, near the galaxy that intersects with the other 2 star fields, including the Gallo star field, there is the headquarters of the war zone jointly formed by the 3 star fields. In the office of the lieutenant general who gave orders to Zhang Feng before. In addition to the lieutenant general, there are 2 other people here. One is the middle-aged woman with a frosty face before, and the other is an ordinary person who looks to be in his 30s and dressed in casual clothes. Although the middle-aged woman had a serious face, she said to the person she had found beside her with great respect, "Mr. Wang Yu, thank you for your help." The person called Wang Yu nodded, and a spiritual energy wave emanated from his body. Then, a shadowy figure appeared in front of him. It was Chen Ming who had just finished communicating with his boss. Through this shadow, the 3 people present could only see Chen Ming himself, but not the environment around Chen Ming. However, it can be analyzed from Chen Ming's movements that he is now sitting on a chair with something in his hands. Judging from the distance between his hands, it should be a terminal. The shadowy Chen Ming suddenly raised his head, raised his right hand and waved it in the air. The next moment, Chen Ming's shadow completely disappeared. Wang Yu said goodbye and left directly after completing the task. At this moment, the middle-aged woman with a more serious expression turned her head to look at the lieutenant general and asked sarcastically, "Is Chen Ming dead?" "A Tang is still detained today, and Chen Ming has not been killed. What use are you? What use are your subordinates? The lieutenant general's face was livid, but he had no rebuttal, so he could only reach out and touch a terminal on the table. At this moment, Chen Ming, who was in the Yuhui star region, frowned. He just suddenly felt a sense of peeping, so he instinctively reached out and released a burst of psychic fluctuations. The peeping sense did disappear, but the meaning behind this peeping sense made Chen Ming know that something bad had happened. The fact that he was still alive was now most likely exposed. This was definitely done by a psychic with the ability to detect. It seems that he may need to face some troubles that could have been delayed by pretending to be dead more directly in the future. Chen Ming quickly adjusted his mentality. After all, he should have been prepared for this a long time ago. There is no such thing as everything going smoothly. Accidents are the norm. Suddenly, Chen Ming noticed a slight psychic fluctuation around him, and he felt a sense of being watched again. But it was different from what happened just now. Just now, someone was observing him. And now, someone was trying to touch him. Chen Ming was alert this time and directly extinguished the psychic fluctuation that just appeared. It's okay. It's not difficult. As long as you are prepared, this kind of peeping can be completely stopped actively. But the pity is that he didn't react immediately to the peeping the last time, and the fact that he was still alive had been exposed. It was meaningless to extinguish it now. And even if the psychic fluctuation that emerged was extinguished, the other party at least knew that the investigation of Chen Ming was considered a failed intervention. It means that there is a high probability that Chen Ming is still alive, and some information will still be exposed. This is inevitable. Now the question is, who is spying on him? Chen Ming quickly figured out the answer to this question. There are only a few forces that will investigate his existence. There is a possibility that the government is involved, but the possibility is not great. After all, they are only responsible for logistics in this operation. Then the remaining ones are the 14th Legion. I just don't know if it is Bai Quan or the people in the war zone behind the second generation. Chen Ming has never been reluctant to think of the worst, so he would rather believe that it is the latter. However, Chen Ming has been prepared to face different situations, and he will not have any discouraged thoughts even if such a situation occurs. He will definitely do what he wants to do. Unexpected changes are nothing more than whether it is difficult to achieve the goal, not whether it can be achieved. Even if the people in the war zone know that he is still alive, even if they are deeply alert, as long as Chen Ming's spiritual power will not emit spiritual power fluctuations when it is used, then Chen Ming is the most fatal and critical risk factor that cannot be offset for them. In this era, who would want to be restricted and unable to touch the spacecraft in this life? Moreover, Chen Ming can control not only spacecraft, but also various mechanical equipment. Even if he controls only a terminal, Chen Ming can directly cause an explosion by stimulating the terminal battery. It is still possible to avoid contact with spacecraft for a lifetime, but if you don't touch mechanical equipment for a lifetime, you have to go out and become a savage. So if the news that Chen Ming is still alive gets to them, then Chen Ming will definitely become their biggest worry. I just don't know what they will do after knowing the details of this matter. Will they send out some psychic with super long-range attack ability? Or is there a more practical approach? Chen Ming first ruled out the previous idea. There should not be psychic with such ability. Even if there is, this ability is countless times more dangerous to the Empire as a whole than Chen Ming's ability. Psychic with such ability will definitely die quickly. But as for what they will actually do, Chen Ming is really a little uncertain. After all, he doesn't know what is in the war zone, and they can only have a rough estimate of the resources they can call. Thinking of this, Chen Ming suddenly had a strange idea in his mind. He began to try to use his own psychic fluctuations to restore the psychic fluctuations that appeared with the feeling of peeping before. If this could be traced back, maybe some clues could be found. But after trying for a while, it seemed that because everyone's psychic fluctuations were different, he couldn't find that psychic fluctuation. If the feeling of peeping was still there, and the psychic fluctuation was still there, he might really be able to track it back. But now Chen Ming could only sigh a pity, and at the same time, there was a little more haze in his heart. If he was disgusted by the people in the war zone again, it would definitely have a great negative impact on what he was going to do next. because he might be forced to expose some situations in order to protect himself. So now, Chen Ming didn't hesitate at all and called his boss back directly to ask for some advice. As soon as the communication was connected, the boss said directly, "Xiao Ming came at the right time. Bai Quan called me just now and asked me if you were still alive. I said I don't know, but it seems that he doesn't believe it. You called me suddenly again, and I guess that it was related to Bai Quan? I'm not sure, but it's possible." Chen Ming said this and told the boss about the situation just now. While Chen Ming and the boss were repeating what happened, Bai Quan was having a splitting headache. After knowing everything Tang Shi did a few days ago, his brain almost exploded, and his whole body seemed to be split apart. He never thought that someone could be so stupid. It's obvious that they only need to raid to rescue the people and attract Yu Hui's attention. Taking advantage of the opportunity that Yu Hui has to be distracted to face the Xinda Company fleet that also launched a raid on Yu Hui's other star system, forcibly clear the defense of the star system and send the Marines to take people away. Then, just pretend to have completed the mission and retreat, and jump to the nearby Kleka before Yu Hui can react. Isn't it very simple to use the weapons provided by Tachyon technology to destroy the planetary shield generator and Kleka? Even if there is a failure in one link, the strength of the fleet is definitely enough to delay until the jump engine is cooled down and retreat with minimal combat damage. As a result, someone took the opportunity to pick peaches according to his plan. If it was just picking peaches, it would be fine. The peach picker didn't want the best peaches on the peach tree and smashed the best peaches that could be eaten after being brought back and left for a while. Then you must be greedy and pick the biggest peach growing on the top of the tree. Not only did he not get any peaches in the end, but he also fell from the tree and was beaten. A well-planned plan could be ruined like this. And more importantly, it was ruined by a completely incompetent second generation. Bai Quan had never paid attention to Tang Shi before, but he had some basic understanding, such as he was a useless second generation, and his background had some connection with the war zone. He was too lazy to even look at it in front of him. After the previous incident, he went to check Tang Shi's information. Then he found out about the various things that happened in the war zone and Chen Ming in the past. Now he understood that the problem with the plan was not only due to Tang Shi's greed, but also hatred and stupidity. But knowing this did not affect Bai Quan's headache and inner madness. Because Chen Ming's death was not just one person's death, but Cheng Xinghe was still in Chen Ming's hands, which was no different from one corpse and two lives. But Bai Quan never believed that Chen Ming died so casually. So he chose to forcibly detain Tang Shi and try to find the possibility that Chen Ming was still alive. From the second day, he detained Tang Shi. In addition to the headquarters of the 14th Legion on the other side of the empire, various parties continued to put pressure on him. After a week, he still hadn't released him, and the documents of various complaints had piled up on his desk, forcing him to make a decision immediately. But Bai Quan knew that he had to consider all factors comprehensively to distinguish what kind of approach was really worth doing. So he chose to believe in himself. He found a psychic with the ability to detect today. Then, he found that the psychic's detection of Chen Ming was directly cut off, not that he failed to detect. He knew very well what this meant. Either Chen Ming took the initiative to cut it off, or someone helped Chen Ming cut it off. And the meaning of these two is the same. Chen Ming is still alive. At this time, Bai Quan's detention of Tang Shi had reached the limit, but fortunately he successfully delayed until the moment when he found that Chen Ming was not dead. So he contacted the boss directly. He needed to talk to Chen Ming. He needed to decide his final treatment of Tang Shi based on Chen Ming's attitude and situation. As for Chen Ming, since he had already confirmed that his survival had been exposed, he simply stopped pretending to be dead. He directly controlled the terminal he gave to his boss and connected it to the terminal that his boss usually used to communicate with Bai Quan. After the communication was connected, Chen Ming came up and said very unceremoniously, "I'll give you 3 sentences. If I don't hear what I want to hear, I'll leave directly." Bai Quan was not angry because of Chen Ming's attitude, but was slightly relieved because Chen Ming was still willing to communicate with him. He thought for a moment and said, "I was unconscious before the mission. This accident was man-made. I can compensate you for all the losses caused by this mission. Also, I don't represent the 14th Corps now, I only represent myself. That's all. Chen Ming did not hang up the call directly to calm down Bai Quan's slight anxiety caused by uncertainty. He asked, "What else do you need?" "The price. It has been a week since the mission. I think you should have known the whole thing. I abided by the rules I set with you before, sent out the positioning signal as promised, and tried to contact you when you came in advance. When I couldn't contact you, I didn't expect you to do anything. As long as I grasped the means of retreat I arranged, a Yuhui cruiser, let it come over and I could leave by myself." Chen Ming deliberately prolonged the interval between speaking so that Bai Quan could listen and think about what he said. "As for the result, I don't know whether you didn't receive my message or not. Anyway, you killed the cruiser. That was my only chance to save my life. First, you had 2 cruisers to force it out of the protection range of the combined shield. Finally, it was destroyed by the offensive-level thermal pulse laser. They want to kill me. So, can you kill all these people to pay for my life?" Bai Quan said hesitantly, "Is this a bit?" Chen Ming certainly knew that he was talking nonsense just now, but isn't that what negotiation is like? Since Bai Quan wanted to talk to Chen Ming, as the victim, had to express something. Anyway, he was just talking casually, and he also knew that those soldiers were always just accepting orders and executing orders. If he really let tens of thousands of people on these 3 spaceships pay for his life, he might have psychological problems. But on the surface, Chen Ming must still pretend. "Do you think I'm extreme? Or are you forcing me? Let me think about how the imperial law judges. Intentional murder is punishable by death, right? But what? But I'm not dead?" Chen Ming's last few words were a bit far-fetched, but he didn't need to act rational now. Even actively abandoning some rational speeches is more in line with his current interests. Anyway, he is not the one who is wrong in the end, so he is naturally qualified to do so. "Bai Quan, this is not a conflict between us, but a conflict between me and the 14th Corps. You can't deny one thing. It was the commander's problem caused by your own internal affairs, not me. The responsibility for the fact that I was almost killed because of this problem cannot be borne by me, the victim." "Mr. Chen Ming." Chen Ming interrupted again impatiently. "Someone should pay the price for your internal struggle, right? You, a major general, are seriously injured, so at least all those who directly participated in it should be punished, from imprisonment to death penalty, right?" Bai Quan hesitated for a long time before saying, "Yes." "Then what about me?" Bai Quan was silent. Chen Ming continued, "I just want to ask you a question. Has the commander-in-chief received the punishment he deserved?" He took the initiative to attack the target of the rescue mission, which ultimately led to the failure of the mission, the loss of at least 1/3 of the fleet, and a huge number of casualties. What kind of punishment should he receive? Did he receive it? Bai Quan's silence let Chen Ming know the answer to his question. "So, someone must pay the price. Don't stop me. You can't stop me. You never know which part of the spaceship next to you has been touched by me. If this matter has nothing to do with you, you'd better clear yourself." Bai Quan suddenly let out a long breath. He had thought it through from the moment he found out that Chen Ming was still alive. This matter was indeed the 14th Corps that did something wrong first, and he couldn't deny it. And as the current Supreme Commander of the 14th Corps in the Gallo Starfield, he was willing to take responsibility for this wrongdoing. He not only wanted Chen Ming to be alive, but also wanted Cheng Xinghe to return safely. So when facing Chen Ming, he was willing to lower his posture. It is not shameful to lower your posture to a psychic who has the ability to subvert the afterglow. So, after Chen Ming said these words, Bai Quan took the initiative to say, "The commander is still forcibly controlled by me. I can make him receive the punishment he deserves. In addition to the losses you caused by the 14th Legion, I will give you additional compensation." Chen Ming was very surprised that Bai Quan could say such a thing, because this was a way of giving in and catering to his requirements, which was not something that someone from the 14th Legion would say. And if he did this, he would offend many people. Would Bai Quan really dare to do it? Chen Ming was not sure, but he would not question it, because no matter how many words he said, it would not be better than the facts. "Then let me see it." If Bai Quan said these words sincerely, and Chen Ming also saw what he did. Then what's the problem with him reconciling with Bai Quan instead of the 14th Legion? The boss, who had been listening silently beside him, suddenly said, "I received a courier notification." Chen Ming asked in confusion, "Courier?" "Bai Chuan's courier. The courier should have been waiting outside for a long time. Let me see. An anonymous card with 2 billion in it. It should be for you." Chen Ming thought about it. The cheapest destroyer usually costs a little over 100 million, and a better destroyer is also normal for 400 to 500 million. The price of a cruiser must be at least 10 times higher than that of a destroyer, 700 to 800, or nearly 10 billion is also normal. The capital ship is something out of the standard. The purchasing power of these 2 billion can only be said to be barely enough. At least it is definitely not as good as the Yuhui cruiser that Chen Ming lost. Bai Quan also knew this, so he immediately said, "These are just the most basic compensations, which are considered compensation for the ship you usually drive, and there are other things. I can directly compensate you with a cruiser and an Alpha-class afterglow core. You decide the specific model. I know that you have been looking up various spacecraft technology papers when you were still in the space station some time ago. The 14th Legion has its own spacecraft engineers. I can give you a series of spacecraft component technologies. I will also apologize to you in person when the time comes." Bai Quan has already made enough gestures, but he still has no intention of stopping and continued, "There is also an additional compensation I will give you myself. A psychic weapon." The boss suddenly said unexpectedly, "Oh, a big bleed." On the surface, he said this to Bai Quan, but in fact he was reminding Chen Ming that the psychic weapon Bai Quan mentioned was of high value. As the person who took the initiative to bring up psychic weapons, Bai Quan certainly knew the value of psychic weapons, but compared with Chen Ming and Cheng Xinghe, it was nothing. He introduced, "Psychic weapons are weapons that can amplify the psychic power of psychics as long as they are held in hand. It only has symbolic significance as a weapon and is actually equivalent to an amplifier. Whatever appearance you need, I can customize it." The boss interrupted again and said, "The appearance doesn't matter. Xiaoming can't really take a knife to chop people. As a firearm, psychic weapons have no difference in combat function from ordinary firearms. Just choose one you like. Then a revolver will be fine." Xiaoming has good taste. He also likes retro style, right? "Yeah." Chen Ming responded casually. To be honest, he now feels that what Bai Quan just said is enough as compensation. There are a total of 4 things as apology. If Chen Ming wants more, he will feel a little guilty. That's it. But compared to these, I want to see something happen more. Bai Quan responded immediately, "Yes, the remaining things will be sent to Mr. Wu soon. And the apology of the 14th Legion will also be placed in front of you later." "I hope so. There is one more thing, Mr. Chen Ming. I have an idea. I hope to cooperate with you again, not as the 14th Legion, but as myself. I know you definitely don't want to hear it now, so please wait a day or two, and I will contact you then." Bai Quan didn't say much nonsense and hung up the communication. He actually wanted to mention Cheng Xinghe, but he also knew that now was not the right time to mention Cheng Xinghe. So, he had to do something first. A second generation with a war zone background. And a psychic with the ability to subvert the afterglow. Who to choose? Bai Quan already had the answer in his heart. Bai Quan opened the drawer in front of him, and there was a gift box in it. The gift box contained a vintage revolver with gorgeous patterns. This was when he was promoted to Major General as the commander of a small surprise fleet on the battlefield of Yuhui, and made achievements that could affect the battlefield. A gift from a big man with a very special identity. Bai Quan loaded the 6 bullets in the gift box, which were also engraved with subtle patterns and would not affect the actual use, into the magazine. He clenched the revolver, turned the magazine, stood up, and left the office. Privileges should be dealt with privileges. One day later, the boss had received some subsequent compensation, such as a series of technical blueprints and storage cards for the extremely heavy armor of the 14th Corps ships that Chen Ming needed. And the blueprint of Chen Ming's psychic weapon design. Chen Ming could make some requests for this blueprint. After the boss gave these 2 things to Chen Ming through Chen Ming's terminal, He also told Chen Ming that there was unrest in the 14th Corps. The boss just gave a general account of the situation, and when the boss told him the news, the situation of the 14th Corps had stabilized. And Bai Quan also contacted Chen Ming again. Although he couldn't see Bai Quan's face, Chen Ming could hear a hint of fatigue in Bai Quan's voice. So he didn't say much nonsense and asked Bai Quan directly, "What did you do yesterday?" Bai Quan didn't answer directly, but said to the boss, "Mr. Wu, please help me tell it. I may not be convincing." Okay, Bai Quan killed the second generation with his own hands yesterday. Chen Ming waited for a while, but didn't wait for the boss's second sentence. "That's all?" The boss deliberately spoke several rows slower, as if to highlight the contrast between the two, before saying, "There's more." He eliminated interference from all sides, forcibly suppressed the voices of opposition within the entire legion, arrested several high-level officials who had opinions, and monopolized power. And afterwards, he took the internal military regulations of the 14th Legion and read out all the things he had done to the corpse one by one, and made the whole scene public to everyone in the Legion. After hearing this, Chen Ming believed in Bai Quan's sincerity. But isn't this a bit too exaggerated? Chen Ming couldn't help asking, "Will this have no impact on the 14th Legion?" Bai Quan denied, "No, this is a reassurance to the rest of the 14th Legion. If a battle suffers heavy losses because of the commander, and the commander pats his butt and runs away without causing any trouble, that would be a huge blow to morale and military spirit. But correspondingly, although I have gained the support of the lower-level soldiers, some of the upper echelons, that is, those behind Tang Shi, are no different from crazy. So this led to a sudden emergence of a large number of voices against me within the Legion, but I suppressed them all. I can only suppress them temporarily, and the people in the war zone are still fanning the flames. I still have a lot of things to do. Now I can only barely spare some time to talk to you." In this case, Chen Ming also said very straightforwardly, "Then tell me, I think you can now tell me the thing you didn't say yesterday. I need to cooperate with you and make enough achievements." Bai Quan relied on his own reputation, military position, and the revolver to barely control the chaos of the 14th Legion. But this time when he came to the Gallo Star region, the soldiers of the 14th Legion under his command were not all his former subordinates. They all had their own ideas and were easily instigated by others, especially those in the war zone. So, since he wanted to completely suppress the internal opposition, he had to make achievements. Therefore, he needed the help of Chen Ming. Bai Quan quickly explained his purpose to Chen Ming. Chen Ming asked back, "So, are you counting on me, a person captured by Yu Hui, to help you?" Bai Quan said seriously, "Mr. Chen Ming, we now know the name of the device that Yu Hui transported, the Soul Awakening Nerve Extractor. According to the time, Yu Hui should have used it on you at least once, maybe in the previous raid, or maybe in the last 2 days. You are still alive, which means that your psychic power has a stronger ability than the soul awakening nerve used by this device. And you didn't run away after this incident, or became negative because of it, and even had time to communicate with me. It means that you must have the confidence to escape from the Yu Hui star field. I have always viewed your abilities at their highest limit. I think you must have controlled a new one after losing the alpha-level Yu Hui you controlled before. Or, you have already controlled a lot before. And if the alpha-level Yu Hui is discovered to be controlled, Yu Hui will definitely be extremely nervous and will most likely clean up the internal affairs, and your affairs will be exposed. So you are waiting for an opportunity, and the key point of this opportunity is just before the second spiritual nerve extraction device is activated. You will suddenly rise at that time, and leave the Yu Hui galaxy with the Yu Hui you control." Bai Quan guessed Chen Ming's arrangement correctly. And he guessed it correctly in the way that he thought Chen Ming was very strong, so he should have such ability, which made Chen Ming not know what to say for a while. After a moment of silence, Chen Ming said, "So what do you want to do?" Bai Quan replied, "I want to strengthen the trust of all the soldiers of the 14th Legion in me. Victory is the best way. As long as I can win, as long as I can bring merit to all my soldiers, then they will completely support me. A failed, useless commander who was shot by me by military law will not have any influence on me after this. Because the soldiers will know that it is me who can bring them victory, not some people who fan the flames in the dark. It was under the influence of these ideas that Bai Quan had such a plan. He was actually gambling. After all, he had done these things before Chen Ming agreed to this matter. If Chen Ming did not agree, it would be equivalent to forcing himself to the most urgent moment. He must put in a lot of energy to completely solve the situation, and there is even the possibility of overturning it any time. However, correspondingly, his gains and growth in this matter will definitely be much more than with the help of Chen Ming. And Bai Quan did this, in fact, there are some other reasons. Compared with his hometown, the 14th Corps under his command was deeply infiltrated by others. He felt that when he came out, the superiors arranged the personnel for him deliberately. In this case, even if the problem does not break out now, it may break out in the future. It is not a bad thing for him to ignite the situation in advance. What's more, the problem can be said to have broken out once, and these infiltrators are bold enough to dare to attack him. He dare not think about what they dare to do in the future. Therefore, it is also Bai Quan's initiative to pull the situation to this scene now. There is no construction without destruction. Either he fails this time and rolls back to the 14th Corps in disgrace, or he controls these 14th Corps and has great progress. Of course, it does not mean that he will not make such progress with the help of Chen Ming. In addition to the help that Chen Ming can give in Yuhui, he also has to face many problems from the inside. Bai Quan himself was promoted from battlefield commander, and it is the first time for him to be the commander-in-chief now. He has no experience, and he must learn and try before he can understand what he should do in this position. This is his own task and his own goal. These are not where Chen Ming can help. Bai Quan can only be considered to have made progress in his ability if he can deal with these problems. After listening to Bai Quan's words, Chen Ming motioned for him to continue. Chen Ming had no doubts about Bai Quan's purpose. It is normal that Bai Quan did not bring all his subordinates with him to the 14th Corps, and it is also normal for the new subordinates to doubt Bai Quan. It is also normal that a commander who can bring victory is more popular than a commander who causes a large number of casualties. Chen Ming thought there was nothing wrong with him doing this. But Chen Ming was actually more curious about Bai Quan's plan and what this plan could bring him. After Chen Ming motioned him to continue, Bai Quan slowly explained his specific ideas to Chen Ming in detail. In short, because Bai Quan needed a sufficient record to establish himself, he needed Chen Ming to help create such an opportunity to severely damage Yu Hui. To be considered a severe damage, at least one battleship must be the result of the battle. Bai Quan didn't need Chen Ming to do too much, he just needed Chen Ming to provide him with some. It was impossible for Yu Hui's battleships to be parked in a certain star system in the star field. There must be a main parking location and some secondary parking locations. It was convenient to cover the entire star field with the battleship's force to avoid problems such as untimely rescue. For example, when the Xinda Company raided Yu Hui before, it came to support with a single battleship. And Bai Quan's goal was these. Chen Ming's individuals that have long been spread throughout the Yuhui star field can indeed help obtain the approximate location information of the battleship. After all, the whereabouts of the battleship are not so easy to hide. Not only the reminder of the ship itself, but also the mobilization of various large-scale materials and the dispatch of a large number of low-level Yuhui individuals. Even if he can't get it, Chen Ming can take the initiative to ask through Hui Huang. He used the excuse of worrying that Chen Ming would be robbed by humans again to ask Yuhui's high level whether there is enough defense force to approach and obtain it. If a battleship is attacked, other battleships will definitely go to support. Then Yuhui's defense force for Chen Ming, that is, the armed force that restricts Chen Ming, will inevitably be weakened. This is good for Chen Ming, who is now unable to control the entire Yuhui star field. He can retreat more easily when Bai Quan takes action, and have more time and opportunities to take more things from Yuhui. And this is an additional plan that does not affect his own plan. Because no matter whether Bai Quan really comes to raid or not, he still has to execute according to the original plan, and it will not affect him if he doesn't come. Chen Ming didn't believe that other people would help him for no reason. But this kind of transaction was clearly marked, and he was the advantageous party in the transaction. The transaction itself had no negative impact on him, and even if it failed, he would not be held responsible. Whether he did it or not, early or late, it had no effect on him. And if this thing succeeded, it would be good for what he was going to do. Why not do it? But there were some things that Chen Ming had to say in advance. What can you give me? Bai Quan had already thought about the price he could pay for this matter and said, in the spoils of this mission, all the alpha-level afterglow cores can be given to you, and there will also be a spirit stone as a reward. Such an answer was within Chen Ming's expectations, so he didn't bargain much and said directly, I agree, but this time, I hope you can keep in touch with me. After getting Chen Ming's reply, Bai Quan suddenly felt that the pressure on his back was much lighter. He felt that it was almost time, so he mentioned it by the way, well, about Cheng Xinghe. Chen Ming knew his worries and said, he is fine, still freezing in the escape pod. As long as I am alive, he will not die. After hearing this news, Bai Quan finally showed some fatigue and said, thank you. This fatigue only appeared for a moment, and Bai Quan immediately cheered up. He did not give him time to rest now. The next action will only be carried out by the 14th Corps. And what he talked about with Chen Ming now is the basis for his future actions. The specific time of the action was soon determined, in 7 days. That is, the 15th day when Yu Hui began to prepare for the second extraction of Chen Ming's spiritual nerve, and there are still 5 days before the 20-day cultivation time estimated by Hui Huang. This time Chen Ming dare not press the time too tight. Otherwise, even if the probability is small, he really can't stand it if something happens again. After explaining everything that needed to be explained, Chen Ming suddenly asked Bai Quan, why did you use psychics to detect me twice before? Bai Quan immediately denied, I didn't. The psychic I found was extinguished at the beginning. Have other psychics found you? Now Chen Ming knew. The second contact detection was the operation carried out by Bai Quan, and this detection was cut off by him at the first time. The first detection with a sense of peeping was carried out by a real third party. Then Chen Ming knew who it was. It must be someone from the war zone. Bai Quan also thought of a similar possibility at this time. However, it was Chen Ming who reminded Bai Quan first, I suggest you be careful. The war zone is not capable of coming to me in the core area of Yuhui star region now. At most, they can do something when I leave the star region later. But it's different on your side. Your previous actions may make them hate you more than me. You may have a big problem there. I know, Bai Quan said, and stretched out his hand to press the exquisite revolver on the table in front of him. Before the remaining 5 bullets were fired, no one should dare to take the initiative to offend him openly. At the same time, on the brilliant side, it was receiving a strange signal through a remote information exchange device. Then, it saw a bright research institute-like environment through the data transmitted by this signal. In the pure white wall space, there are 2 rows of neatly arranged culture chambers. These culture chambers are controlled by various mechanical equipment and carry out cultivation work. And in these culture chambers, there are people who look almost exactly like Chen Ming. At this time, these clones are only a few years older than Chen Ming himself. It looks like the cultivation will be completed soon. G3, who was controlling all this, had just connected to the communication with Hui Huang, who saw this scene. G3 was not surprised that Hui Huang would access this signal. Instead, he briefly introduced to Hui Huang, these are the first batch of Chen Ming's clones produced here. Hui Huang, who was ordered by his superiors to access this signal, quickly recorded these pictures and asked, only these? 50 is almost enough. If there are fewer, the cost will be too high. If there are more, there will be no place to use them. 50 is just right. G3 explained casually and continued. All the data of these clones are the same as predicted, all within the range of normal people. Hui Huang asked again, I saw it. Then what? Why did you ask me to come here? Because I need you to help me do something. Each clone will have a slight difference in human body data after the cultivation is completed. But after the implantation of personality and memory, each clone will also have differences in character and consciousness, which is where I cannot confirm the difference with Chen Ming. And Hui Huang, you have the most opportunities and times to contact Chen Ming, and you know Chen Ming's character and personality and know his situation. I need you to help me select several clones that are most similar to Chen Ming's original character, and I will select several with physical fitness that is most similar to Chen Ming. Then consider comprehensively and decide on the object to implant Chen Ming's spiritual nerve. Are you confident that the second extraction will be successful? Huang's question was immediately answered by G3. No, but I am only responsible for what I should do, cultivating clones and implanting the final awakening nerve. The premise of my mission is the successful extraction of the awakening nerve, so I will not consider the possibility of failure. G3 continued very talkatively. Although I am not the one who cultivates artificial ineffective awakening nerves, I have been paying attention to it. The new awakening nerve has cultivated its extreme aggressiveness. Even if it fails, it will at least destroy Chen Ming's awakening nerve, so that he will never have the possibility of threatening us. You don't need to worry about anything. Huang Hui did not show any difference and asked normally. Then in the future, if the implantation is successful, what about the other clones that were not selected? G3 did not answer directly this time, but asked, you have reported before that Chen Ming's IQ is very high? Yes, Chen Ming's learning efficiency can be compared with beta-level individuals, but I think this is affected by psychic power. Other recorded psychics have never shown new abilities like this have never been developed before. G3 said with great knowledge of this aspect, psychic power does have an impact, but it is not a decisive factor. According to the research of humans, part of a person's IQ is determined by nature. So other clones of Chen Ming will most likely have such special features. When the implantation is completed, they will be sent to where they should go to conduct scientific research. Send? Where is this cloning institute? It's just underground in Chen Ming's institute, so these clones need to be sent to other places. Are you controlling it yourself? Yes. G3 thought Hui Huang was worried about its situation, so he explained, don't worry about me. The underground cloning institute is completely isolated from the ground. If you want to go directly from the underground to the ground, you need to take a detour from somewhere else. Chen Ming has no chance of contacting me. And there is an emergency transfer channel underground. If there is an unexpected situation, I will be taken to the isolation area for isolation as soon as possible, and there will be no problem. Hui Huang naturally didn't explain his thoughts to G3 and directly said, I understand. So what do I need to do now? Wait for the cultivation to enter the final stage. It will be done soon. The physical cultivation will be completed within 24 hours, and then the personality consciousness will be corrected. Yu doesn't need to sleep, and in a sense, as long as the aging parts of the core are replaced, they will be immortal. So 24 hours is not long for them. Hui Huang doesn't mind waiting a little longer. In addition to helping Chen Ming collect some information, it can also satisfy its own curiosity. Hui Huang's behavior of running around following the signal of the research institute was seen by G3, so much so that it suddenly asked Hui Huang, are you also interested in these biotechnologies? Some. I usually deal with industrial equipment. It's really rare to see this kind of technology, and I'm really interested in it. G3 was not at all stiff and serious when facing Chen Ming, a human. Instead, he said enthusiastically when facing Hui Huang, I have some entry-level information here. If you don't mind, you can take a look. Okay. Huang took a general look at the biotech-related documents that G3 had placed in the public storage area. After copying all the data to itself, it asked, the failure rate of cloning seems to be very high. Where are those failed products? G3 immediately replied, the failure rate is indeed very high, but it is acceptable compared to the results. All those failed products will be injected with drugs to death and placed in a special freezer waiting for harmless treatment. If you want to see it, switch the line and you can see it. I'll open the permission for you. Huang quickly looked over the newly opened area of G3. There is a closed area in the corner of the Cloning Institute. There are several refrigerators working here at the same time, keeping the environment low. There were several huge metal boxes here, and inside the boxes were a large number of twisted human bodies and irregular pieces of flesh and blood exposed to the outside. Various broken limbs were everywhere, thrown away at random. Although Hui Huang did not have human consciousness, it knew how terrible such a scene was for people, especially since these pieces of flesh would occasionally have a face of Chen Ming. Chen Ming would definitely not be able to hold it back when he saw it. This was also the disadvantage of mass cloning. Hui Huang recorded the situation here and continued to return to the institute. Watching G3 carry out the final stage of fine cultivation of 50 complete individuals in the culture chamber, Hui Huang suddenly asked another question. Is there a chance that the clone is a psychic? Yes, but it only exists in the records of humans. We have not conducted many studies and actual experiments on cloning, and there has never been a case where a cloned psychic appeared. What if it appears? The probability is too low, but if it does appear, I will need to cooperate with other individuals to study this clone psychic while dealing with the work at hand, and I will be very busy at that time. G3 asked Hui Huang, "Are you curious about what such an existence would be like?" "No, I just saw that the psychic fluctuation detector had fluctuations." G3 immediately glanced at the psychic fluctuation detector. It was just concentrating on controlling the clone cultivation equipment, and the other equipment was just letting them run on their own, so it was normal that it didn't notice it. It's just that when it looked over now, the reading on it was 0. But Hui Huang didn't need to lie to him, so G3 immediately called up the previous data. It looked at the slight bulge on it and said, "There is indeed a fluctuation, but it is within the error range, so the instrument did not issue a prompt, it doesn't matter." And Hui Huang reminded again, "Look ahead. I just saw that it is a periodic psychic fluctuation." G3 did not doubt it and immediately retrieved all the data of the equipment. Then it did find an abnormality. About 2 days ago, the detector began to detect periodic psychic fluctuations, but the intensity of each psychic fluctuation was very low, and the instrument itself would only treat it as an error. Hui Huang tried to guess, is there any interference? For example, Chen Ming's spirit stone? G3 denied, no. Chen Ming's 2 spirits are placed in his box made of silent alloy. Our despair spirit stone is embedded in the equipment of the Surface Research Institute and isolated from the underground. This situation should not happen. Chen Ming's ship spirit? No, the ship spirit has lost its carrier and is extremely fragile. It is impossible to leave Chen Ming's body. There must be some other reason. G3 shared all these ideas with Hui Huang and also hoped that Hui Huang would give some advice. But Hui Huang obviously didn't understand anything about psychic power, and he didn't get any instructions from Chen Ming in this regard. Even Chen Ming probably didn't know that the cloning laboratory was located under his institute. So, it was powerless. G3's attitude towards Hui Huang did not change because it didn't get help. After searching everywhere for a long time without finding any results, it said to Hui Huang, "You should collect the data flow for the time being. I may need to conduct a comprehensive inspection of the Cloning Institute." G3 quickly mobilized some robots that performed auxiliary tasks and all internal monitoring equipment in the institute. He began to conduct strict inspections and scans inside the entire Cloning Institute. Previously, G3 had placed items with psychic fluctuations in the institute. This would cause the psychic fluctuation detector inside the institute to often scan some subtle residual psychic fluctuations. Therefore, it would generally set an error value for the psychic fluctuation detector and treat anything that did not exceed this value as an error to eliminate the impact. This also led to it not emitting that subtle periodic psychic fluctuation. However, G3 now personally checked, and there was no such problem. He quickly eliminated the anti-interference error he had set and found the source of the psychic fluctuation. In the freezer that Hui Huang had just seen, between the bodies of those defective clones. Obviously, G3 had injected them with reagents that could definitely kill them when he abandoned these defective products. But now, there is still a clone showing signs of life activity. And that spiritual energy fluctuation came from the clone that still had life activities. But strangely, after a precise scan, G3 found that it was not the clone that had signs of life. The real signs of life were something inside the clone's body. G3 immediately called up the record data that it had previously saved for each clone through the tag on the clone, and found the data of this clone on it. From the photos in the record data and the actual body thrown here, it can be seen that the clone's appearance looks fine. But in fact, this clone has a heart problem. In the middle of the cultivation, the myocardium developed abnormally and grew irregularly. So this clone was abandoned by G3 before. G3 did not expect that this situation would occur after he had clearly abandoned the clone. It immediately sent a robot to transport the frozen body back to the next room of the clone cultivation chamber. There is a dissection table covered with various tools and some mechanical arms with different functions extending from the wall next to it. G3 followed the prompts of the psychic detection equipment and dissected the body along the position of the psychic fluctuations. It found in the final results of the examination, the body functions of the clone had actually been completely cut off, and even corpse spots appeared on the body. The body of the clone was indeed dead, and it could be said that it was completely dead, without any possibility of struggle. However, the deformed heart inside the body maintained a weak vitality, and even now it was still beating slightly. And at the moment of each beat, the heart would emit weak psychic fluctuations to the surroundings. This periodic heartbeat was the source of the periodic psychic fluctuations detected by the psychic fluctuation detector that Hui Huang noticed. However, it is not quite right to call this thing that emits psychic fluctuations a heart, because after G3 dissected it and placed it on the tray next to it, it can be seen that it does not look like a heart at all. It is just a group of deformed flesh and blood tissue that is still moving and emitting psychic fluctuations. After G3 repeatedly checked the body several times and confirmed that there was no life activity or spiritual energy fluctuation, it was placed in an ice coffin and pushed to the corner of the room by the robot. The deformed flesh and blood was taken to another room on the other side of the dissection room. There are more and more complex professional equipment here than in the dissection room, and several robots are sending some new equipment here. In addition to the most basic inspection of the flesh and blood, G3 also needs to use other more professional spiritual energy detection instruments to study it. Soon, 2 complex reports were listed in G3's database. One of them was a normal scan of the flesh and blood tissue, which showed that the flesh and blood tissue was composed of normal myocardial tissue with abnormal connection. After genetic examination, the myocardial tissue was indeed Chen Ming's gene, and there was no abnormal mutation. But the existence of this living flesh and blood tissue itself was the biggest abnormality. And G3's other report was the data obtained from the inspection related to spiritual energy. However, it only focused on a few key lines of data in this report: psychic wave type, psychic wave complexity, and psychic activity. The psychic wave type can roughly analyze whether the detected psychic is an offensive, defensive, or auxiliary psychic based on the psychic wave itself and the location of the psychic wave. Although Chen Ming is an auxiliary psychic, the actual results of G3 just now confirmed it. The psychic wave emitted by this group of flesh and blood tissue with Chen Ming's genes is a protective type. It first protected itself under the effect of the lethal injection and then remained alive in an extremely low-temperature environment, which obviously conforms to the situation G3 investigated. This is also a normal situation. After G3 marked it, he continued to look at the next line of important data, the complexity of psychic fluctuations. The complexity of psychic fluctuations is a set of data that can be seen through the details of the amplitude of psychic fluctuations. It does not mean that the greater the amplitude, the higher the complexity, but the faster and more obvious the amplitude changes, the complexity of psychic fluctuations will rise. The higher the complexity of psychic fluctuations, the more complex the final realization of psychic power, and the stronger the effect may be. However, under normal circumstances, after a psychic uses psychic power, he can see the strength of the psychic effect just by looking at it, and the complexity can be roughly estimated. Generally speaking, it is not used much. After all, the ultimate strength of the psychic power of a psychic is not only determined by complexity. It is only because this group of flesh and blood tissue can only use psychic power instinctively and passively, so G3 needs to confirm this. Now it seems that compared with the complexity of the psychic fluctuations of this mass of flesh and blood and Chen Ming himself, one can be said to be elementary school arithmetic, while the other can probably write a paper on linear algebra. And the complexity of Chen Ming's psychic fluctuations has been increasing, especially after the first failure of the spiritual nerve extraction. In addition, various studies have shown that psychics and psychic clones have almost no connection in terms of psychic power. So no matter how big the difference is between the psychic fluctuation complexity of this mass of flesh and blood with Chen Ming's genes and Chen Ming himself, It is normal in G3's view. In addition to confirming the psychic strength of the flesh and blood, it also wants to see what the difference is between psychics and psychic clones. And then it did see it. If it hadn't known it in advance, it would never have thought that this mass of flesh and blood was cloned using Chen Ming's genes. G3 continued to mark this line of content and looked at the last important data. Psychic activity. This is a value similar to the psychic strength of a psychic, but it is the same standard used to distinguish different statements about psychics and psychic creatures. Because only humans can obtain and master psychic energy through the spiritual nerves, other psychic creatures do not have such a thing as spiritual nerves. They themselves are their own spiritual nerves. Obviously, this group of deformed flesh and blood tissue is not formed after the clone becomes a psychic, but is an independent psychic creature from the beginning. Although G3 is not clear about the specific criteria for judging psychic creatures, in its opinion, this thing is definitely more like a psychic creature than a psychic. It can only be said that cloning is not a normal reproductive process after all. The different tissues and organs of the clone need to be differentiated and cultivated by the original stem cells before they are formed. Then in the process of formation, there is indeed a certain probability that this situation will occur. But then there is a question in front of G3. What exactly affects this group of flesh and blood tissue and makes it produce psychic energy? This can obviously only be figured out by conducting more in-depth research. At this time, the equipment of this cloning research institute is only equipped with some equipment for daily testing of Chen Ming and can only carry out some ordinary research. If you want to understand the principle of the formation of this mass of flesh and blood tissue, these alone are definitely not enough. So G3 must inform the higher-ups about this matter. And it itself has no right to make a decision on how to study this mass of tissue. After all, this is the first case of their Yuhui producing a psychic individual in the clone. Even if it is not a clone psychic, it is just a body tissue of the clone. But the first case is the first case, which has a very high value. So, after apologizing to Hui Huang, G3 asked Hui Huang to withdraw from the connection and asked Hui Huang to keep it secret. It needs to contact the higher-ups to decide what to do next. Under normal circumstances, if Hui Huang is a normal individual of Yuhui, it is natural for it to keep this secret. But now, Hui Huang will only go to Chen Ming first and tell him about this. After all, this is the psychic power displayed by Chen Ming's clone, and it is also a part of the clone's body tissue. No matter how you look at this situation, even in Hui Huang's eyes, it is very strange. It's better to notify them as soon as possible. At this time, some time had passed since Chen Ming and Bai Quan had talked. Chen Ming was studying a plan to circumvent his ability to replenish the ship's fuel. He had tried to use the transformation function directly to complete this idea, but he did not find anything that was directly transformed or manufactured with fuel as a material and could not conveniently store the transported gaseous materials. Even for Zhuo Jing's self-destruct ship, fuel is generally only used as an additional filler for the spaceship, not a necessity. So he could only choose to use the method of transporting raw materials to replenish fuel. After his several attempts just now, there is no problem in transferring the solid and liquid materials needed to make fuel. Of course, Chen Ming had done so many material transfers before, and he already knew clearly whether solid and liquid materials could be transferred, but he just wanted to confirm it again. But gaseous materials are different. This thing is much more troublesome than solid and liquid materials. Although Chen Ming has now turned his mind around, thinking that his ability is now completely capable of manufacturing spacecraft fuel, this method can be used to ignore the problem of difficult storage of gaseous materials. But in the future, it is not only Chen Ming himself who needs fuel, and there are far more gaseous materials that need to be used than fuel. And the spacecraft fuel itself is designed to be a very universal fuel. In addition to on the spacecraft, it can also be used in various places in the colony. Therefore, under the premise that Chen Ming has plans to develop colonies in the future, the batch transportation of fuel and gaseous materials has become something he must do. If Chen Ming chooses to manufacture the finished product directly around him, it is equivalent to doing both manufacturing and transportation at the same time. But you have to know that as Chen Ming's spiritual power increases, The most basic repair and transformation abilities he has mastered from the beginning are the basis for Chen Ming to transport materials over long distances. The mental power consumed by these two ways of using spiritual power has been decreasing. This is not because Chen Ming feels a decrease in proportion because of the growth of his own spiritual power, but the real consumption is decreasing. So Chen Ming had the confidence to supply the material transportation of a colony by himself. But the ability of manufacturing has not changed in this way, at least not yet. The mental power consumption of manufacturing is about 5 times that of the two basic abilities when Chen Ming just mastered spiritual power. That is, at least 20 times more than now. If the two things are done together, he will definitely not be able to supply the mental power consumption of manufacturing alone. So Chen Ming can only choose to transport raw materials, even if gaseous materials are difficult to preserve. Tasks such as mass production that will greatly burden mental power must be handed over to professional industrial facilities. His psychic power can only be used in emergencies. If he really needs to rely on the extremely consuming manufacturing function for a long time to maintain the transportation of materials and the operation of the colony, it is enough to think about it. So Chen Ming was thinking, can he modify the inside of a large gas tank so that the modified gas can be stored in it? Anyway, he can extract the contents through the gas tank. As long as the gas can be stored, it doesn't matter where it is stored. Chen Ming thought about it and didn't think there was anything wrong with this idea. So he did it directly. Although the ability to create psychic power out of thin air consumes many times more mental power than other abilities, the effect is really useful. As long as there are enough materials stored around him or on the spaceship he controls, he can make them at will according to the technology he has mastered in his mind. There is no limit except mental power. Of course, Chen Ming will not use the materials on the Yuhui spaceships he controls, so as not to expose the situation of the Yuhui he controls in advance. There are materials available for him around him or on the ships still in the pirate space station. Although he had not asked Lao Wu to do anything suicidal like hunting pirates during this period because he was already in trouble, but he could still collect some materials that the repair shop needed with the help of Lao Wu, so there would be no problem. For example, the materials for making fuel. So Chen Ming made a cooling device he knew in the gas tank he had just made. The inside of this device uses a liquefied gas needed for making fuel, which has a good effect in absorbing heat energy. And when Chen Ming saw a long strip of liquid-filled device inside the transparent gas tank, he knew he had succeeded. As long as he casually modified an openable opening on the cooling device and then installed the rest of the part inside the gas tank, the liquefied gas can directly leak from the inside of the device to the gas tank. And every time he repairs this cooling device in the future, the liquefied gas will fill the entire device again, and as the opening he modified is opened, it will spread to the entire storage tank again. The mental energy consumed is much less than making fuel or such a cooling device every time. After confirming that the design was okay, Chen Ming modified it again on the spot and sent the items back to the pirate space station without leaving any trace. Of course, it means that there is no trace on the ground next to Chen Ming. There is nothing we can do if surveillance equipment is recorded. Moreover, Chen Ming conducted such experiments around him instead of on any ship under his control. In fact, he wanted to show it to Yu Hui, to make them anxious and analyze what his psychic power can do. Who knows, they might think that Chen Ming's psychic power may continue to grow and slow down the subsequent actions. Although Chen Ming also thinks that it is highly unlikely, it is useless if he doesn't try it. Anyway, the manufacturing ability itself is limited by the technology Chen Ming has mastered. Like the transformation ability, it can basically only be used on ships below destroyers or other non-combat aspects. And the only thing that is truly strategically significant and can change the situation of a battle, in Chen Ming's opinion, is the maintenance ability. But Yu Hui has known this ability for a long time, and there is no need to hide it at all. So Chen Ming is now casual about whether to expose the ability he possesses. Even if he knows, there must be a countermeasure. And the countermeasure that Yu Hui can now use is at most a non-contact. But at present, non-contact countermeasures have no meaning. Chen Ming has spread the Yuhui he controls throughout the Yuhui star field. After Chen Ming tested his ability, He also planned to talk to the boss about the handover of the highest point at that time. The ship, the boss said it has been sent to the pirate space station, but there is no detailed process for the specific handover. So this matter must be prepared first. Because Chen Ming will inevitably be hunted by Yu Hui at that time, he doesn't want to change ships and escape in a hurry when he is hunted. And he can also take advantage of this last period of preparation time to find Bai Quan again. Because just now after Chen Ming agreed to Bai Chuan's request, he directly started to investigate the Yu Hui battleship. Relying on the Yu Hui individuals controlled by Chen Ming throughout the Yu Hui starfield, he really found the location of Yu Hui's battleship and even a new battleship of a new model that he had never seen before. In addition to the radiation class that had been fighting with the 14th Legion before, Chen Ming also found a battleship that was being manufactured in a galaxy, which was temporarily named the Nova-class unmanned battlecruiser. Although the design and manufacturing process of this battleship are fully closed, and the various departments responsible for manufacturing are isolated from each other, the information of the spacecraft is kept confidential. However, the production of a battleship inevitably requires the transportation of a large amount of external materials. And it was this part of the Yu Hui individuals responsible for the transportation of materials that let Chen Ming know the news, and also knew the location of the Nova-class shipyard, a giant dock. Chen Ming also secretly took a few photos with the Yu Hui individuals mixed in, and instantly transferred them to his mule class parked in the pirate space station through the function of transforming the storage module. After deleting the photos in the hands of Yu Hui, who originally took the photos, Chen Ming read the storage module he had just transformed. It can be seen that the design of the Nova class is very distinctive, and it is an X shape like a section of interlaced jeans. There are two huge slots in the upper right corner of the X for installing main weapons, while there are some slots in the upper left corner that are smaller than the main weapons but larger than large weapons. Chen Ming couldn't tell what they were used for. It can only be said that this is another asymmetrical design. Chen Ming always felt that tachyon technology, like this asymmetrical beauty. No, it seems that many companies design spacecraft with asymmetrical models. It can only be said that Yu Hui is worthy of being independent from humans. Even if it goes out, it will look like this. However, the asymmetrical design itself is not a problem in space. Such a design can bring more complex changes in ship capabilities, and it does have some advantages in combat. However, it is not easy for Chen Ming to find more specific information about this new star. Moreover, even if Hui Huang comes, it will not work. After all, Hui Huang has no reason to contact this ship for no reason. So in terms of intelligence, this new ship must be more difficult to obtain than the radiation class. However, this is a capital ship under construction that has never appeared on any battlefield. Destroying it will definitely bring greater results than destroying the radiation class. With this as the goal, Bai Quan can achieve greater results. Chen Ming wrote down all the information about the new star class, and it depends on Bai Chuan's own choice at that time. Speaking of which, Chen Ming suddenly found that many forces have been designing their own battleships recently. Not only Yu Hui, but also Xinda Company, the Conqueror class is the most obvious example. And the government has also designed 2 battleships for logistics support in recent times. I just don't know if the military and tachyon technology have any. But this is a long story. Chen Ming still has to focus on the things in front of him. In fact, when he saw this giant dock, some ideas popped up in his mind. Just like controlling this new star-level ship.
Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you did, please like, share, and subscribe.